So, the Marvel Avengers video game has finally dropped, and fans have found themselves more curious about the lore than ever. While many are analyzing the main story campaign and the post-story campaign, I think many are unaware that there's actually pre-game continuity. During late 2019 and the majority of 2020, the Marvel Gamerverse line of comics have been publishing one-shot comics providing a glimpse into the world of the characters that we've been playing as before the events of the A-Day disaster that start the game. Yes, these stories are in canon for now. They all take place before the start of the game, and yes, you can read them right now. So, on today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the first of these 5 comic books, starting with Marvel Avengers Iron Man #1, to see what the world of Avengers was like before the start of the game.
Stars and Stripes!
Hello, and welcome back to another Carrot Scraps video, and by another, I mean the 31st. So yes, first of all, these stories are in canon, they all take place before the start of the game, and yes, you can read them right now. In fact, you might be able to read them for free. If you're interested in reading these stories, you can find a digital collection of them on Comixology by searching Marvel's Avengers Road to A-Day trade paperback, or by following the link below. For those wondering how you might be able to read these stories for free, there is a very simple answer to that question: Marvel Unlimited. Marvel Unlimited is like Marvel's Netflix for their library of comics, and if you pre-ordered the deluxe version of the game, you actually already received a free month of Marvel Unlimited. And if you were or still are excited about the game, I can't think of a better series of comics to start off your Marvel Unlimited month. Anyway, without further ado, let's talk about the comic. Our story begins with the Lethal Legion fighting the Avengers after trying to intercept a disguised SHIELD shipment. Iron Man notes that the team shouldn't be having such difficulty with such low-level supervillains like Titania, Whirlwind, Absorbing Man, and the Beetle. While fighting, Tony reflects on previous battles with alien and robot armies, and concludes that he didn't have as much trouble with higher-level threats such as those. So the fact that this fight with the Lethal Legion was so difficult for the Avengers was very strange. Eventually, Tony begins to suspect that the Beetle might be to blame for the poor performance of his technology. The Avengers end up pushing past these enemies, culminating in the Jade Wall maneuver, where Iron Man pins Titania to the motionless Hulk. With this final act, the Avengers are ultimately victorious. Later, Stark visits the incarcerated Abner Jenkins, aka the Beetle, at the Vault, a high-security SHIELD prison. Tony tries to stay jovial and sarcastic with the Beetle, but quickly loses his temper. Jenkins admits that he was using stolen Stark tech secrets to get the edge in the previous battle, but refuses to tell Tony where the information came from. The scene ends with Abner implying that he isn't the only one with Stark secrets in the underworld of crime. Back at Stark Laboratories, Tony attempts to discover how his security was breached, allowing these secrets to leak. After hours of searching, he begins to rethink his approach to solving the puzzle, and contacts Black Widow for advice in the world of espionage. Natasha lightly toys with Tony, but tells him to seek out other geniuses. Later, presumably after taking Natasha's advice, Tony meets with Bruce Banner at a secure facility SHIELD lab. Monica Rappaccini arrives, and Tony jokes about the obvious relationship growing between her and Bruce. Bruce expresses his concern with the lack of teamwork in the Avengers' ranks, citing the Jade Wall as a maneuver he was uncomfortable with because it was devised without his knowledge. Then, the conversation between Tony and Bruce becomes heated when Tony asks Bruce if he has allowed SHIELD to compromise his security. Bruce becomes frustrated, but Tony calms him down, asking him to remain careful while cooperating with SHIELD. The next day, one of the SHIELD agents present during Bruce and Tony's argument is leaving work when he is confronted by Iron Man. Tony reveals this supposed SHIELD agent to actually be the supervillain Spymaster. Spymaster explains that if SHIELD is scanning Stark Industries' computers, that he is capable of scanning their information and selling it to online buyers. The two begin to fight one another, and Spymaster appears to have the kill shot on Tony before Iron Man regains the upper hand and is able to defeat Spymaster. Tony reflects on how close he came to dying during this fight, as other aliases of Spymaster appear and disappear before he passes out, his last words being, "Too much data. You can't keep it safe." Later, Tony confronts Nick Fury, director of SHIELD, at his private quarters. Tony appears in his civilian clothes, with Spymaster's unconscious body right next to him. Stark asks why SHIELD insists on running secret surveillance of his technologies if the Avengers have done so much good in the world already. Nick Fury explains that it would be dangerous not to keep tabs on Tony Stark, given his current and previous history with technology. Nick Fury prepares for a fight, but Tony leaves Fury's quarters with his last words explaining that he will prioritize himself and his security over the security of SHIELD's interests. And that's the end of the issue. So before I go for today, I wanted to discuss some of the more important elements of the comic that I think relate to the game in an interesting way. I think one of the biggest details that are dropped is that Tony confirms that he's fought aliens and robotic armies before the events of the Marvel's Avengers video game. So these Avengers have seen a lot of activity, and presumably, AIM is not the largest threat that they've ever faced. I'm curious as to what kind of alien armies these Avengers faced specifically, and if we'll see them in the future of these comics, or maybe even the future of the game. Another one of the larger details that I think are significant, but also make me personally excited as a fan, is that the comic features several prominent supervillains from the comics. Titania, Whirlwind, Absorbing Man, the Beetle, and Spy Master are all now confirmed in the Marvel Avengers universe. Obviously, after these stories, a lot of these characters ended up in prison, but if the developers of the game take this lore seriously, we could see these villains in the near future. One of the biggest things that I want from the Marvel Avengers video game is more villain variety. When the game was solicited and we saw Taskmaster, Absorbing Man, and MODOK, I thought that was a small piece of a larger roster that we'd get to see in the full game. But sadly, the full game doesn't have nearly as many supervillains as I thought there was going to be. In the future of the game, I'd love to see more elaborate and dramatic boss fights against supervillains. Especially supervillains like Whirlwind, whose powers are so unique compared to the other characters in the game, that they have the chance to create a really memorable gameplay experience if they're used in a boss battle. While those details are the most specific points that stick out to me when reading the comic, I also really appreciate the little details that are going to be important in the full game. For example, while Tony and Bruce's conversation does eventually de-escalate, the quick turbulence of their social interactions really goes to show how tense their relationship was before the fall of the Avengers. I also really like the quick acknowledgement of Monica Rappaccini in this comic. We get to see the character who will eventually spell disaster for the Avengers team function normally at a S.H.I.E.L.D. laboratory with S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and Bruce Banner. You can also speculate, based on her positioning in certain panels, that she potentially had some kind of connection with Spy Master before he was ultimately captured by Iron Man. Without a doubt, though, this is confirmation that Monica was steadily leaking information about the Avengers and Stark Tech based on her connection with Bruce Banner before the events of A-Day. And lastly, I like seeing this conflict between Tony Stark and Nick Fury. I was really surprised and confused that the full game featured very little Nick Fury in it. As for my personal feelings on the comic, I thought everything about it was just okay. Aside from a few panels that I actually really liked, like most of the panels involving Spy Master, I wasn't really impressed by the rest of the artwork. I thought it was serviceable to the story, it didn't subtract from the experience at all, but it also wasn't anything that I was extremely impressed by. But again, I think the highlight for the artwork is a lot of the Spy Master stuff, especially when the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent is revealed to be Spy Master, and I also really like the perspective when he's throwing some of his projectiles. As for the story itself, I like that it gave us different social lenses to view Tony Stark through. We see him desperately try to keep his sarcastic and humorous tone, to the frustration of his companions, and we even get to see him snap and get frustrated when his facade of sarcasm doesn't work with Abner Jenkins. Seeing him get so angry and overreact in this way really illustrates how difficult it is for Tony to have his power and authority questioned. For someone who's normally the smartest person in the room and can normally fix or answer anything, the idea that his technology or that his secrets have been compromised is a direct threat to his character and his value. The plot itself was fairly simple, but the character work is really what stands out here. I'm very curious to see how much these other one-shots will connect to each other. Anyway, those are my feelings on Marvel Avengers Iron Man #1. Next time, we're going to be looking at Marvel Avengers Thor #1. To find out a little bit more about the God of Thunder before the events of A-Day. And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching a very different type of video. I want to do more of these videos in the future. I really enjoy the Marvel Avengers game and like talking about the lore associated with it, and I'm a huge comic book fan, so I feel like this is a good fit for me. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this video, and if you'd like to see more content like this in the future. But if for whatever reason you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and to subscribe to my channel for more. To watch me play video games live, you can check me out on Twitch at carrotscraps. All my other social media, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram are at carrotscraps as well. Thanks again so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Mayonnaise? No! What kind of monster would do that to French fries? It's a European thing, Bruce. Try it next time. You might be surprised.